Hello, MotoAmerica fans. It's time for another episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you may even learn something from this unlikely pair and their special guest. The mic is yours, Paul and Sean.
Hello, MotoAmerica fans, and welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. I am Bice, the sidekick to Paul Carruthers, our communications manager, and we're bringing you another episode of our weekly podcast that we keep doing one after another and banging them right out. And we have a good one this week. So let me start by let's talk to Paul. Paul, I know these guys, our fans sometimes get crazy over the fact that, well, they haven't really ever said anything. I think we worry about it too much because we always talk about the weather. But I've been hearing it's been raining a lot out there, and man, it is so beautiful here in Ohio. It's sunny. It's a little chilly, but it's not bad. But we've had some great weather lately, so it's a little bit upside down. Is it still raining out there?
No, it stopped. But if you go on my Instagram yesterday, there's a video of me actually like bucketing water out down the side of our house. It was about the drains messed up, so I'm having somebody come out. Of course, they couldn't come when I needed them, but they'll come tomorrow and fix it. But it was just there was probably 6 inches of water on the side of my house because the drain wasn't flowing, couldn't keep up with the rain. So I'm out there in shorts and no shoes, and I'm bucketing water out of the part that was flooded. But once it caught up, it was fine. And today it's sunny, and it's always beautiful after a rain, and it's nice and sunny. It just dries everything out and everything looks real fresh. So I think we're okay. We might have made it through Stormwatch 2022.
That's right. Yeah, I was telling you on Slack how we communicate. I actually had drainage problems last weekend too, and I was dealing with that, not because of heavy rain, but just we had a little bit of a backup that occasionally happens that I had to work out. So I guess we're both kind of doing plumbing duties. But let's talk about, we had Chuck Axland on, our chief operating officer last week, who's integral in the schedule. And we've had a lot of feedback. We've had a lot of commentary on our Discord server that we run. We've had a lot of people asking questions and talking. So it's really, we knew it was going to be interesting when we saw it tentatively, and it sure did turn out to be that way. I mean, there's so many nuances. I've honestly never seen a schedule like this, certainly in AMA time, or even for sure with MotoAmerica. So it's kind of cool that we've got a few little different things. It makes it interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's cool. And I think today's guest will be interesting to speak to. It's going to be, it's always, I think it's nice to hear from the fans. And, even when fans aren't happy, at least they're fans, and they're good enough fans that they let you know. So I think we should, I think there's a lot of positives to be drawn even from negative comments because they care, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And, speaking of to that, so it's kind of cool, on our podcast, Chuck had mentioned that, he reads all the comments, he sees what people say, and he was able to respond to some of that stuff. But at the same time, he's the one that kind of pointed out to us that there was this lady who has a podcast called The Odious Soul, and out of the blue, well, I don't know if it's out of the blue, we'll find out, but she did a podcast talking about the schedule. She had 2 other guests on, and come to find out she's got a weekly, or maybe more than weekly, podcast that she does, and she's involved in a lot of other things. So let's bring her in. Her name is Shannon Utz, or Utz. And Shannon, the first thing I have to ask you is, do you like pretzels?
Actually, I prefer the plain potato chips a whole lot better than the pretzels, but thank you. And nobody on the West Coast is going to get that at all. But
yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, Paul has no idea.
Well, that's not the first time I've had no idea.
And of course, for the listeners, that brand is pretty big, as Shannon said, on the East Coast, certainly a little bit more in the Northeast, but it's a potato chip manufacturer. I love their pretzels, but I think aren't they out of Pennsylvania or something?
Yeah.
Shannon?
Yep. The factory is like 30 minutes from my house, not far from Kayla.
Oh,
actually,
it is
too. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So do you own part of the Utz pretzel fortune?
I wish. Let me just say, I wish. I didn't win the lottery here. That billion was not mine. So no, I wish I had something like that, but no.
Yeah. Well, so let's start off by talking about what your deal is, Shannon. You have a website, and one of the things I wanted to say is I thought it was cool the way you explained on your website what the odious soul means, and I also loved the fact that odious can be spelled ODS, which is really good because I have some friends who have a dog, and the dog's name is Diogi, and I thought the dog's name was spelled Diogi, but the dog's name is actually spelled capital D period, capital O period, capital G period. It's actually DOG is the dog's name. So somebody that has the ODS or the odious soul, that struck a chord with me. So tell us a little bit about what that means and what things you have going, and then we'll kind of get into your relationship with motorcycles and everything.
Yeah, no, like the word odious stood out to me when I was like 7 years old. Me and a friend, were having a sleepover, and we were just going through the dictionary looking for words that were kind of cool and maybe at the time a little naughty for 7-year-olds. We were giggling at stuff, but the word odious just stood out to me. So I was quite the rebellious, teenager, think like, goth kid. And I started calling myself Odious Soul. I did,
Wow.
have a band that we were called Odiously Departed Souls, where the ODS came from. But it just kind of stuck with me. I have evolved as a person. I'm definitely a lot more positive and optimistic these days. But it sticks with me. And then people are always like, why do you call yourself odious? And I'm like, oh, it's a long story, but no, I have a YouTube channel. It actually started with the Forest Fen treasure hunt like years ago, and haven't really done much with it because I found this new obsession this year called motorcycle racing. So, but now that the season's over, a couple friends and me, like we talk all the time. We have great banter. So we were like, you know what, let's test out, like a podcast kind of thing and see how it does. And if it's successful, we'll start our own channel. We'll do it separately. So that's kind of where we started. You can find me on all the social medias, Odious Soul, pretty much everywhere. That's mine. No one's allowed to ever take it from me. So.
And I was looking on your feed. Well, Paul and I both watched that last podcast with your guest Amanda and Mike, I believe it is. And I also looked at your feed on Instagram and saw that you acquired a Yamaha MT-07, which is a terrific twin cylinder bike. Now I get why, as you said on the podcast, you're a fan of Twins Cup and Stock 1000, but you have done some track days on that bike. So you've kind of jumped in with both feet into the motorcycle scene. Did you used to ride, or is this something you recently picked up?
No, so like seriously, a year ago, I didn't even know MotoAmerica existed. I mean, this time last year, I had no idea. So I have fallen down the rabbit hole pretty hard and pretty fast, thanks to some people around me. But I'm at that point in my life right now where no one's depending on me, like from a financial standpoint. And I'm just in a place where I wanted to find myself, find the next thing, and kind of conquer a lot of fears. And, motorcycle racing, all that has just fit that perfectly. And I am somebody, like, if you watch my podcast, you saw my spreadsheet, I can be a little extra when it comes to things. Okay. So when I do get interested in something, I tend to fall hard into it. And this has actually been amazing so far, because it's even after, only 9 months, like there's still so much that I want to learn. There's still so much that I research, weekly. And honestly, I can't believe that I'm here right now with you guys. Can I just say that how privileged I feel to be content filler during the off season for your show? I mean, truly, I am honored.
Well, you're easily pleased. Okay, well, it was funny because I was at a local brewery having a beer when I got the text from Sean and Chuck telling me about the podcast. So of course I couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch it at that point in time, but I did listen to it since then. So I was pretty impressed with the spreadsheet. In fact, we could have probably used you a little earlier in the process. It would have saved somebody else from having to do one. But I think from listening to the podcast, I think your main concern, or the thing that got you, the thing that you didn't like the most, was the fact that we weren't going to have a race at VIR. And it sounds like you went there last year. It sounds like you had a good time camping, et cetera. And it's a place that I'm going to miss as well. And I'm hopeful that one day that can come back, because it just, to me, it has a real good feeling. It's kind of got some soul to it, and the old barns, and I like the racetrack itself, and we get a good crowd there, et cetera. But so have you listened to the podcast or read the transcript from Chuck's being on the show with us last week?
Oh yeah, no. And I loved how he explained so many things for us fans.
Okay,
I
good.
mean, that was huge. Yeah.
Right.
So, and yeah, like the whole not going to VIR, it's for selfish reasons, it's
Mhm.
within like a 5.5 hour drive for me. And it's where I fell in love with MotoAmerica. So, it's purely selfish why I'm upset we're not going there, but I'll get over myself and I will find other races to make it to. So,
Which is fine. I mean, everybody looks out for themselves, and that's why everybody who comments and doesn't like, the fact that we don't have this or we do have that, it's generally a personal reason that they're not looking out for the good of the world or what have you. It's usually they're thinking to themselves, and Sean and I do the same thing. I mean, our favorite racetracks are the ones with good restaurants that are close to the airport and have a nice hotel on Airbnb. So that's kind of how we'd make the schedule. Like for me, I'd probably do like 12 rounds at Laguna Seca and call it a day, because I could drive there, but that wouldn't exactly work. The other thing I picked up on is that you have no desire to go to Laguna Seca, and you're not a California fan.
If somebody wanted to pay my way to go out there, I would never say no. But, I'm not a California fan. I just think, California is like its own species out there, so, but at the same time, I know my friend Mike says I have to go to Laguna Seca. Apparently, like the neighborhood out there does not like the track, and it may not be there for the next after 20 years. So it's one of those things where go see it while you can, kind of a thing. So, but I probably wouldn't spend my own money to get out there, but I never pass up an opportunity to travel, honestly. So
yeah, Laguna Seca is a pretty special place.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much history there, so much history.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, as a testimonial here, I grew up in New York and live in Ohio now, so I'm as East Coast as you are, but Laguna Seca is my absolute favorite track in the world. And I've told my wife this several times. I want, when I'm cremated, I want my ashes to be spilled out on the top of the corkscrew, and if I can sop up some spilled oil, I'll be happy as can be. So, and that's absolutely true. I want my ashes to end up at that track, and even though I've never lived in California, and we visit there, and I know there's some interesting things about California, and when I say interesting, I put quotation marks around it for people from the East Coast, but absolutely that track is something you'll have to go to, Shannon. But I want to talk about you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, what's funny is the thing that actually got me into motorcycle racing, the actual thing, like the thing that made me book my trip to MotoGP this year, like immediately after watching, was my friend Mike had told me that I had to watch this documentary called The Doctor, the Tornado, and the Kentucky Kid. And if I'm not mistaken, that was at Laguna Seca, right?
A lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, So, I mean, maybe like it actually inspired me to make it all the way over here onto this podcast with you guys without me, intentionally realizing it. So maybe now I will have to check it out.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you're kind of clairvoyant. You guessed early before we started the podcast that I was going to ask you about the Utz name, but also I was going to ask you what really started it for you, because so it sounds like you kind of got interested in racing and then you bought your own bike and you've done track days. Is that kind of the progression?
Yeah, it's all Mike's fault. I met Mike, he had used to have a racing license, has been track only for the past, decade, loves motorcycle racing. And I talked to another friend. I was like, there's this guy, Mike, who wants me to go on a track. I'm like, I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. I'm going to kill myself. My friend Piza, he was like, well, you don't know if you'll like it. Sign up for the MSF course. You might not like it. You might fall in love with it. And then I watched that documentary, and I literally got, like, when that documentary was over, I Googled, started planning my trip to MotoGP, and then I scheduled my MSF class for the weekend afterwards. It was the first course available in the season. And then watched the Daytona race in March. Of course, went to MotoGP, which, can I say, if anybody out there has never been to a live race, at MotoGP is where I realized you can, like, you feel the bikes when you're live. Like when you're watching on a TV, it's a completely different experience. When you're live, like you can feel the difference between a 600cc and the leader bikes. Like it's like the sound is different, but there's also like a feeling like you get like pulsating off the track, like, and you can hear like the traction control set in, like I remember like at Coda, like when guys were going up that hill to turn one, like you can hear that popping, like you can hear it. And those are things that you don't pick up when you are watching from, a YouTube video or from your TV screen, Live Plus or whatever. And MotoGP definitely set me, but it was definitely a VIR because I got done riding. Itzy's my bike's name, by the way. I got done riding. It was 9:30 on a Friday night. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of the weekend? And I was like, oh wait, there's a race at VIR. I went and packed my bags, woke up early the next day, drove to VIR, and it was a VIR, the MotoAmerica experience, which is totally different than a MotoGP event. That experience is kind of what made me fall in love with, this whole brand.
That's nice.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things I've identified this a couple times too, and I've actually made this analogy with Formula One. I don't know that MotoGP is quite like this. MotoGP is a little bit more tangible or accessible. Formula One seems to kind of intentionally make their sport a little bit less accessible to fans because it's such an elite sport that if you got a chance to talk to Daniel Ricciardo or any of the other drivers, it's like, wow, amazing. And same thing with MotoGP for the most part. But Shannon, I'm sure you will be a testament to this. I've seen some of your feed photos. I mean, our paddock is extremely accessible. You can talk to any of our riders, and you seem to have talked to many of our riders. And I'm sure it started right from the time you went to VIR. Is that something you say is an advantage about MotoAmerica, is that you really get to meet the stars?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, so basically the reason why I have never become a fan of any other organized sport is the reasons why I love MotoAmerica. So I actually made a list. So I'm going to read this off if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I didn't want to forget anything. So number one, the open paddocks, even though you're not necessarily interacting with the teams inside, you can still watch them work on bikes. You can watch them do their thing. Like you can see the racers up close and personable. Like you feel like you are part of the experience at MotoAmerica. The accessibility to riders, they usually have the fan walk. And then just the accessibility to MotoAmerica crew. Like my first day at VIR, at the end of the day, I got to meet Teague, the technical director. And I mean, he was so awesome. He was willing to talk to me about just how things operated from a technical perspective. And I mean, he was so professional yet personable, and another pro is you can watch from almost anywhere on the track. I mean, it's not like you get an assigned seat and you're stuck there the whole time. If you want to watch Super Sport at turn 4 and then hop over to, turn 11 for Superbike, you can do it, and in most of these venues, I've only been to 3 venues. So I don't know if this is at everyone, but you can take like a bike to actually ride from one side of the track to the other. So it's, even if you're lazy, you have options. Or if you want to watch like a live feed, you can always go to the podium and watch the race from there and then be there at the podium when these guys get their trophies, which is huge. You also have the affordability factor. I mean, even if you have to travel to get to these events, camping on site is super cheap. I know for all the venues that I went to, you get to bring your own food, drinks, even adult beverages if you want to. I mean, you go to like a football game, you're paying $15 for a beer, So this, if you are like a family of 5 and you got to feed everybody for a weekend, this is an option. It's an affordable option. And then I think the last thing is just the positivity of this community. And I mean, I know everybody has bad days and there's always like the little things that people will gripe about. But when it comes down to it, this community at this level is one of the most positive and encouraging group of people I've ever met. Like the smiles on these riders' faces, even if they're having a bad day, like Max Van, I've seen him crash and then still smiling and laughing about it later, and I think that's like for where I'm at in my life, to be around a group of people that are just truly happy to be racing and be involved in the sport. Like people are happy here. And I mean, to me, that is huge. And I think that's what drew me in even harder.
That's good to hear, because I often, when I've obviously been to a few Moto Grand Prix in my life, and it always amazes me. And I always wanted to talk to a fan about it, about the differences. And now, you've given us a pretty good indication of how you feel about that, and it's all very nice stuff. I always wonder, it's like I go to MotoGP and I watch people like peering through a chain link fence, and they're excited to be watching, a mechanic clean the fairing on one of the bikes after a practice session. And I always wonder, like, does that make you more popular because people want what they can't have, and the fact that they don't let them in the paddock kind of makes them want it more, and it feels exclusive, like, it's like being behind the velvet rope at a club. But I don't know. It's like the MotoGP is obviously so popular, and they draw a lot of people to their event. But yet, as you mentioned, it's so different than how we handle things, because we don't make that an exclusive field. We open the paddock to everybody, and our riders are very accessible. Whereas, MotoGP riders, that people are thrilled if they catch a glimpse of one of their heroes or what have you. And it's just so different. But it is interesting to hear from a fan's perspective that you actually like the way that we do things. And it's not that you don't like MotoGP, but the fact that you favor the open paddock, etc.
Yeah, I mean, you just get to see things, and I guess, and hear things, and it's like you understand more the principle. Like, I know just from walking around the paddocks that different riders, feel more pressure from their teams than some of the other ones. Like you hear things, you see things, like, I don't know, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but like, what I'm talking about. So, but yeah, I wouldn't want MotoAmerica to change. But at the same time, I feel like MotoAmerica is a step for a lot of riders, who maybe want to go on to like World Superbike or MotoGP or something. So it also gives like the young fans a chance to see better what it is, and then also possibly dream and maybe work a little bit harder to get there.
Right. So how many races did you go to last year?
Went to MotoGP, VIR, pit race, and then New Jersey.
Oh, wow. So
Wow.
Yeah, not bad for my first year, huh?
Yeah. Do you plan on adding to that, or is that about all you can muster up?
Honestly, it's one of those things where we're starting to plan now, like what races do we go to, and then what track days do we go to? Because obviously I only had 3 like track weekends. I spent 4 days on a track myself, so I want more of that next year. So it's going to be a balance of like what I can afford and what we can fit in, to next season.
So is there any events where you attend a track day at the same time, like whether it's on the Wednesday or the Monday, or wherever the track day does it, or is it, are your track days completely separate from your MotoAmerica trips?
I think it's something that we're going to have to consider this year. So,
Yeah, because I always think, if it was me doing that, I would really enjoy going to a MotoAmerica race, watching those guys on the track, and then going there the next day, or having gone there before I get to see them ride at the same facility. It would kind of, I don't know, it just seems like it ties together really well. And I'm always curious to see if people do that or not. I'd hate to think that there's people that just go to track days and then they go home and don't even bother watching a MotoAmerica race, but I'm sure that's true in some cases.
I'll definitely have to look at those kind of options. Of course, the East Coast ones would be better because transporting a bike. But I've also thought about getting a dedicated track bike. So maybe, like, I've considered maybe just renting some bikes next year just to kind of test out the different bikes before committing to a new track bike.
That's a really good idea, Shannon. Now, I actually wondered about that with the bike that you have, because I can see from your photos that it is a street bike. You took the MSF course, so I'm sure you do some riding on the street, but it's amazing how it's evolved. A lot of people do just have track day bikes, and they just have them for that purpose alone, and they get a lot of riding in by going to either their local track or going, like you're saying, to a track where a MotoAmerica race is. So do you do both right now? Do you ride on the street, and do you also do track days?
Yeah, primarily I'm riding on the street. I wanted to learn as quickly as possible, so I don't have a trailer. I had no way to getting my bike to a track. I had to that I rely on other people. But at the beginning, I just wanted to ride and I wanted to learn and I wanted to get better and I wanted to understand what I was seeing on like the TV screen when I'm watching these races. So, riding on the road was my only option. And then slowly as you meet more people, like Mike, I think he asked me like on a Friday night, like, hey, do you want to go to North Carolina and ride on Sunday? And I'm like, wait, on a track? Like what? Like I've been riding for 4 weeks. You want to get me on a track now, huh? So but my progression, like I look at my first track day where I was still in that terrified stage, of turns. And then my last track day, I did a Saturday, Sunday at pit race, which was an incredible track to ride. Like, oh my God. And then just trying to push myself in every turn possible. I mean, obviously I still need to get my lean angle a little bit better. There's so much that I still need to work on, body position, all that. And then doing it on a hyper naked and not on a street bike, there's a whole different learning curve. And right now she's completely stock. So I haven't upgraded anything. I wanted a full year of her being completely stock so I could understand what changes actually occur when I do go to upgrade her. So yeah, I mean, I can talk about this forever.
Well, I mean, if you're representative of our fan base, and I think you are, my gosh, I mean, to have that steep a learning curve for, not just getting a bike and learning to ride it, but taking the course, safety course, riding on the street, understanding how to do that, and also doing track days and coming to our races and seeing what the professionals do and how they do it, which inherently is obviously going to help your riding, as I know you've got a 360 absolutely immersive experience in the whole motorcycling culture. That's really impressive. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on, and why Chuck pointed you out as well. In your own podcast, I think you mentioned that your two favorite classes are Twins Cup, and I think I know why that is, but also Stock 1000. Can you tell us what it is about those two classes that you like the most?
Well, let's just start with Daytona last year. I mean, those twin races at Daytona I think they were some of my first races that I actually watched, after the documentary. And so you had like race 1 at Daytona, it was like 40 plus riders in that class. And then just how tight they were riding. I mean, they were bouncing off each other. You had Mazziato bounce off the embankment wall in race 1. Like it was that's a moment I will never forget. And I think you guys actually brought that up in one of your recent podcasts too. I'm like, we'll be talking about Mazziato bouncing off that wall for like the rest of our lives, and then you had race 2 at Daytona, a lap 1 where Blake Davis slid out. I think there was like some liquid on the track, and then a bunch of other riders are following suit, and you have bikes going everywhere and riders like running for their life to get out of the way. I mean, it's where twins became my favorite. Now I will say, I hate to say this, but I will say that I feel that some of that twins energy kind of died off after the West Coast races a little bit, Blake Davis started doing a little bit better later in the season, and, Mazziato and Barry were maybe not putting in their naughtiness quite like they had started off the season, which kind of was a little disappointing, but I still love twins, still love it. Junior Cup kind of grew on me, I will say. I feel like Junior Cup started to get a little bit on that naughtier kind of battling front the more we went into the season. But Stock 1000, I have to say, I think it's because of Hayden Gillum. I can't lie. Love watching him ride. And I love that he's in Superbike. I mean, he finished 8th in Superbike this year. So I think him as a rider, he has a whole lot of potential. I can't wait to watch him continue to grow. And watching him crash out at pit race on race 2 was like a heartbreaking experience for me, because I knew that was probably to keep him from getting that number 1 plate this year. So
let's talk a little bit about the king of the baggers, because we found that seems to be it's either love or hate. And I'm curious to see where, I thought I was not going to like it when we first came up with the idea. I thought it was silly, and I wasn't a fan, but I became a fan like the first time I saw them actually go around the track at Laguna Seca when we had that invitational.
So why did you have to bring up King of the Baggers, man?
Because I want to hear what your opinion is as one of our fans.
All right, so I may not be the best person to ask. I actually had an ex who was in like a like a club where they all were Harley guys. So I might have a little bit of resentment towards bikes like that now because of him. But I mean, I wasn't necessarily interested at the beginning at all of in the bagger races. Watching them live finally at New Jersey, it was fun watching them. It was so much fun watching them in the rain. I mean, every time they came by, I feel like parts of the bags were like missing. Like there were just parts that just disappeared as these bikes were going around. So it was amusing. But I will say I like the baggers being a part of Moto America. I would say more just because it draws a larger variety of people to the races. I like that it's getting more people involved. And that might just be my own personal observations, because I know at New Jersey, there was a pretty good turnout. And I feel like a lot of the people that showed up, they look like they only showed up for the baggers. And, that might be the wrong thing to say, but I feel like it draws a more diverse crowd, and, anything that's going to get more people into the sport is not a bad thing.
Well, we're lucky your ex didn't ride a super bike.
No, maybe my future ex will, like, who knows. But
that's an interesting background you have there in that. And that's I'm not saying that's common. I don't mean it's common in that a lot of people have exes that rode cruisers or whatever, but that there's that sort of division. There's that thing, like if you and somebody else were the last two people on earth and you found out the person rode a motorcycle, you'd be like, oh, that's cool. We're both motorcyclists. And then you find out, he rode a cruiser and you rode a sport bike. And it's like, oh, well, okay, I guess you're okay. You're all right. So if you keep it on the level of we're all motorcyclists, I think that's cool. I think the thing that did it for me, not only that first time we saw the King of the Baggers race at Laguna Seca, was when you talk to the riders. I mean, when you talk to, my gosh, Tyler O'Hara, or a world-class guy like Jeremy McWilliams, who's raced everywhere on everything, and Kyle Wyman, or any of these guys, they love racing those bikes so much that it's like, well, that in itself seems to be inherently cool to me, that if they think it's cool that they're doing it and they love doing it, then, I love watching them do it, I guess. But you mentioned Hayden Gillum and some riders. Who are your favorites? Who have you talked to? Give us some of your observations of some of the riders that you've met and had conversations with.
Oh my goodness. So, I mean, my favorite is definitely, Jody Berry in the Twins Cup. I got to meet him at VIR. I also harassed him a little bit at New Jersey, and it kind of gave him a hard time, because it seemed like after the West Coast races, he just didn't have the same ambition, I guess. Maybe that's the word I want to use. In the races. And it was sad. I mean, it was a tight race. You had Mazziato, Davis, and Berry like very close in the points to the end. And, but Blake Davis just took off. And, I feel like Berry just, I mean, I know a lot of the Twins Cup guys were, it was like you go to a weekend and you're only racing once. That was a big issue for them. So my heart kind of went out. But I love this new schedule for the Twins Cup, because I think those guys, I mean, a lot of these people have to work full-time jobs. Like they still have to, make a living on the side, besides the motorcycle racing. So there's that. Hayden Gillum, not only his riding skill, but he has this aura about him. And I'm a very outgoing person. If you don't believe me, just look at my Instagram feed. I have no problem talking to anybody. Not very many people intimidate me, but there's something about Hayden Gillum, like he turns me into a bubbling idiot. So let's see here. I love Cam Peterson, his attitude, his positive attitude, and just like growth mentality. I think it's amazing. Same thing with Schultz. Like Schultz has a naughty side to him. Like, like when things don't go quite well, you can see it come out sometimes, but I love Schultz. Blake Davis, I actually told this poor kid in New Jersey that he wasn't my favorite. But I believe he has immense potential to kind of go wherever he wants in his sport. I think he is so young that he has the power to like dominate the sport in whatever class he decides. Like I think he has that potential. So I'm looking forward to seeing him grow. I still remember him kind of being pouty, after the race 2 at Daytona. And, but I'm anxious to see his growth in this career. And I hope he keeps the passion for the sport. Let's see here. Who else? Well, I mean, Roger doesn't ride anymore, but I met him and it was so amazing to hear his voice in person. Cause I mean, his voice is so soothing, like when you're listening to these races. I don't know. I feel like I've met so many people. Max Van, like, can we just say how amazing of a young man that man is? Just so positive in all of his social media comments. Kayla, I mean, she's growing into a woman. We got to eventually stop calling her a kid, but I can't wait to see her. I hope she continues with the passion in the sport, because I mean, just to have any women in the sport period is just huge. Patricia Fernandez, I mean, great attitude, like just positive and smiley and happy. Like, I love people like that. Who else have I met? What else? I mean, like, I don't know. Let's talk about Max Flinders for a second. I mean, he's a
Oh
guy
yeah.
you wouldn't necessarily know from winning races. Okay. Like, at least me, like, I've only been here for a year. He's not, you don't see him on the podium. Okay, whatever. But he is so much like a part of the community. Like, everybody wants to wear that yellow shirt with the 88 on the back, and just, I think he has a future in the sport, even if eventually he decides to stop riding. I can completely see him, coaching another team or just doing anything. I think his passion kind of fuels it. It just shows you that just because somebody isn't on the top all the time doesn't mean that their talents, shouldn't be recognized, kind of a thing. But
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it takes off fastest to make up our paddock, and what you say about Max is absolutely correct. We feel the same way too. I mean, he gets frustrated that he wishes he could be on a bigger team and have a teammate and share data and things like that. But for what he's done and with his, well, I mean, it's a lot of his personality, but everything he's done, he's so outgoing. He helps all the other riders. He's always out on the starting grid, and he's always talking to the fans. So your point's well taken on that. And he probably represents the best of what our paddock's all about in terms of the accessibility of our riders and how they are towards our fans. So we definitely agree with you on that, as well as all the other people you're talking about. So it's cool to hear your feedback on that.
yeah. And then I want to give a shout out to Mama Mesa, Stefano's mom. I mean, she's like the most adorable paddock mom out there. So
we just wish Stefano would race our entire series. We know why he doesn't. We get why he doesn't. We've documented that several times, and he seems to do okay with it. But yeah, I mean, we love having him there because he's such a great rider, and it's always great to see Stefano's mom and dad. It's such a family organization, like you're saying. Hey, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. A lot of times on here, I try to champion the cause of corner workers. And have you ever considered doing corner working at one of our races, or any of them?
I did think about that this year. I was thinking, like, is that something that I want to pursue or do? And I don't know if my personality could handle it. I like to kind of go. I'm a little bit too ADD, I think, for it, personally. But I think it's a great opportunity for people. I mean, if you love racing and to get out there and like to be that close, I mean, especially if you're in one of the good corners where, lots of activity seems to happen. I mean, it'd be a great opportunity for people. But for me, I think I'm way too ADD to be in one spot all day.
Yeah, you need a corner where they crash a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's a really good testimonial about our sport, about road racing, motorcycle road racing in general, and certainly MotoAmerica, Shannon. I mean, you can watch, oval racing, car racing, or whatever, or I'm not trying to disparage dirt track, but dirt track, you kind of sit there in one spot and you see them go around. Our races, you can have a here they come, there they go experience, or you can do like you said, get on your bike or whatever and go around various parts of the track or come into the paddock or whatever you want to do, or watch it on the big screen from the podium. There's so many different avenues by which to watch our racing and study a corner and see how they're going through it, or go to a different spot. That it's really good for people that do like to get around. And I know from being a fan for years myself, I mean, just the amount of walking you do at a track like that, it's actually really good exercise for you if you're that kind of a fan that gets around there. And it sounds like that's something you do quite a bit.
Oh, definitely. Lots of walking, lots of calories burned in a weekend. That is for sure.
Yeah.
And then, I still come home and watch all the races on either Live Plus and YouTube. Like, I still watch them when I come home, because there's always those moments where you're like, what did I miss? What did I not see? Oh, during this race, like this person like disappeared. What happened happened to them. So, I mean, it's something that even though I watch them live, I still have to go back and, watch them on YouTube or Live Plus later.
Yeah, I'm sure most people do that.
Do you ever watch Pressure to Rise?
Oh my God, I love that series. I mean, I will say that Pressure to Rise was probably why I started actually paying attention and caring about Superbike. I mean, just getting to know those riders at that level, it made you want to root for some of them. And it also gave you like more insight to who they were, and so yeah, love that series. Hope they do it again next year.
Yeah, it's great. That crew we work with quite a bit. They're usually in the media center with us. And I always tell our guy, the producer, Steve Radley, who works so intently on those episodes. I always tell him, man, as much as I follow the sport and love it, I get done. I just go, I effing love this MotoAmerica sport, because just the stuff in the paddock that you hear, or how they mic up these guys, and some of them don't even know they're on the mic and everything.
Yep.
And it's just great to see that side of it. It adds such a dimension to it that I think it's been really good for our series. I'm so glad to hear that you watch it too.
Oh yeah, well, I finally made it into an episode. I made it into the one about New Jersey, because I was hanging out with the CFE guys, at the podium, and I did make it in briefly. I think I got like my 5 seconds of fame in that, me and my red shirt. So yeah.
Well, it's funny, and I did notice on the feed that you were wearing the CFE hat a couple times, and I saw you hanging around with Mark and those guys. So obviously we know them well. We've had them on the podcast before, so it looks like you're pretty much a member of that group too, now that you've got the hat.
Oh, so, no. You got to be careful. You got to be careful. There's only certain people who are members there. I know there's a couple, I think, honorary members, but no, they're very careful who they actually let in. Okay. So I think you have to go through like an initiation process, it's hazing, all that stuff. I'm not there yet. Okay. Not there yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
Those guys are insane, but we love them.
Oh my gosh. The energy that they bring up at the podium, I think they just really get the crowd going. And I think that is huge. And then the small things, like they'll see a kid. Like there was this little girl, they brought her into the podium area. She got Josh Hayes' hat, she got access, she got access beyond what she normally would have because of these guys. And then she went to take the hat to Josh Hayes to get it signed. And he was like, you know what? I usually keep my Dunlop hats. How about you take my boot? I'll sign a boot for you instead. I mean, the look on this girl's face of how excited she was. And it was because of the CFE guys. And I know they get like this frat boy rap, but they do the little things like that for like the fan community. And I love that about them, so.
Yeah. They're really cool. They're respectful to us too, because, we'll see them and they're always partying. They're always trying to, hey, come and have a beer. They say that to Paul or to me, but they're real cool. Like one of the guys, he called El Duque. He always carves something into the side of his hair for every round, but he's one guy, he's like really cool about being respectful for what we have to do. So sometimes he knows we're working hard, so he'll kind of keep his distance a little bit and let us come over and see him a little bit. In other words, he doesn't really disrupt our what we have to do, because he knows we're running here and there. So those guys really do get it, and they're great to have. They're part of the culture of what MotoAmerica is. I mean, let's face it. Hey, I want to ask you, so do you have any questions for Paul or me about MotoAmerica? Anything from, I think we've covered the schedule. Is there anything else that you always wondered, or anything about, that kind of free reign?
I mean, honestly, I can't say that I have questions, because normally I get all the answers I want in the moment. I mean, I have had no problem harassing, like in New Jersey, somebody, I won't mention who it is, gave me like a pit bracelet for Sunday. So, I mean, I've even gotten to go out on the track, at pit time. So, I mean, no, like, I think the community has just been absolutely fabulous, to me. And I've been able to get every answer to all my questions as I go along. So no, I'm sorry, I don't have any questions for you guys. Well, actually, how long have you guys been involved with MotoAmerica for? Let me know that.
Well, Paul, you tell your story.
Well, I was, I might've been employee number 1, but I've been there since the beginning.
You were employee number 1. You definitely were.
Yeah, I was the editor of Cycle News for a long time, and I've obviously knew Wayne forever. And when the opportunity came up, I jumped at it, and I'm glad I did, because, you know, the way things have worked out, I think we've been able to do a good job and accomplish a lot of things, and really build the series from nothing to what it is now. And hopefully it'll continue to grow that way. So yeah, I've been there for the full 8 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, and Shannon, for me, I mean, I kind of started out a little bit the way you are, except for a long, long time ago. And it was really just riding motorcycles, which begat going to races that were in the areas that I lived in. And then over time, just getting involved in the paddock, you know, pressing my nose against the glass a lot. You know, I ended up working as a press officer for Yamaha for several years, and that evolved into working for MotoAmerica. So, you know, it's really the same kind of thing as you. My enthusiasm and the fact that I have a background in writing and you know, advertising and PR and stuff like that was kind of what put me in the niche where I'm at. But we have people in our paddock or on our staff. Most of them are enthusiasts. Almost all of them are. And you've probably seen and found guys that are in, a lot of the guys that are in the crews of these teams can race a motorcycle faster than most of us us mortals, I should say. They're former riders, or, you know, they still do ride a little bit. You know, there's a lot of talent in there, even among the wrench spinners. So, so it's just a cool thing to be part of, and you're part of it. Absolutely, Shannon. And I love the fact that you've jumped in with both feet and you're doing what you're doing, and it's only going to get better from here. And your feedback and input has been really, really valued today, to listen to what you say. And man, if every one of our fans was like you, we'd be golden for the rest of our lives. So, but we're running a little bit out of time here. But I want to give you a chance to prop yourself a little bit. So it's the Odious Soul, Shannon Utz, and you're a fan, but you've got a lot going on the side. And, you know, people can follow you via Odious Soul on various platforms. Can you give us the rundown on that again?
Yeah, it's Odious Soul at Instagram. I got an Odious Soul on TikTok. Please don't judge me on that. The Odious Soul on YouTube. You can always try to find me on Facebook. It's just Shannon M. Utz on Facebook. But and Snapchat, Odious Soul on Snapchat as well. So anywhere, just search Odious Soul and you'll find me.
Awesome.
That's terrific. Well, thanks so much for being on with Paul and me. This was a great chance to talk to somebody. You're more than a face in the crowd, Shannon, but it's kind of a term that I think I would use there. Is, you know, we saw you're enthusiastic, and thanks for telling your story for this really special episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. Thank you guys for having me. Seriously, what other sport can somebody become a fan at the beginning of the season and end up on a podcast with these two at the end? Okay, like seriously. Thank you guys.
Do we see you at Daytona? Is that the first opportunity?
I believe I will be at Daytona. So yeah, if you see me, you better come and give me a hug. All right.
All right,
So
well,
that's mandatory.
We sure
Be
will.
careful what you wish for, because Sean's a pretty big hugger.
I'm a tall, tattooed redhead. I stand out in the crowd. So
All right. I'm gonna look for you.
We're short, old white guys. All right. Well, you guys take care and have a good rest of your week.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
See y'all.